It's 11 p.m. You are lying in bed, staring at the shadows on the ceiling, feeling an exhaustion that goes far deeper than just your muscles. It's a quiet, heavy drain right in the center of your chest. You spent the entire day being perfectly accommodating. You smiled when you didn't actually want to. You agreed to a favor you didn't really have the time for. You carefully managed the moods of everyone around you, adjusting your tone, softening your words, making absolutely sure no one felt inconvenienced by your existence. And now, in the quiet of your room, you check your phone. You see a message from a friend you bent over backward for earlier this week. It's just one word. Cool. Instantly, a cold spike of anxiety hits your stomach. You start analyzing. Did I say something wrong? Are they mad at me? Are they pulling away? You twist that tiny neutral response into a devastating indictment of your entire worth. This is the reality of the people-pleasing trap, or, as it's sometimes called, the curse of being the nice guy or the perfect friend. We think our endless accommodating makes us good, moral people. But often it just makes us incredibly anxious, deeply resentful, and prone to taking absolutely everything personally. We don't realize that our chronic niceness isn't actually a gift we are generously giving to the world. It is a shield we are holding up to protect ourselves from rejection. And that shield is incredibly heavy to carry around every single day. I remember a time in my own life when my default response to any request was a cheerful, immediate yes. It didn't matter how exhausted I was. It didn't matter if my own life was completely falling apart behind the scenes. If someone asked, I was there. A few years ago, a friend asked me to help them move apartments. They were in a bind, losing their lease abruptly, so I agreed without a second thought. I showed up after a demanding 10-hour workday and spent the entire night hauling heavy cardboard boxes up 3 flights of narrow, poorly lit stairs. I assembled heavy wooden furniture. I swept empty rooms, and I made absolutely sure everything was perfectly set up for them before I even considered leaving. I finally got home as the sun was coming up, my back aching, completely drained of any energy. I slept for a few hours, woke up, and opened my phone. The first thing I saw was their social media story. They were out at a sunny brunch spot with a group of other friends, laughing, clinking glasses, looking completely refreshed. They hadn't invited me. They hadn't even texted to say thank you. I sat there on the edge of my bed, and this dark, heavy resentment washed over me. I felt used. I felt entirely invisible. I thought, after everything I just did, after I gave them the last ounce of my energy, this is how they treat me? But what I had to finally admit to myself years later was that I hadn't helped them out of pure, selfless generosity. I did it because I was terrified of what would happen if I said no. I was trying to buy their approval with my exhaustion. And when they didn't pay me back in the currency of validation I was secretly expecting, I felt betrayed. My niceness was actually a covert contract that I had forced them to sign without them even knowing it. This is what the people-pleasing trap actually looks like beneath the surface. It is rarely about being genuinely kind. It is about control. We believe that if we are perfectly accommodating, if we sacrifice our own needs entirely, then the other person mathematically owes us love, respect, and safety. We think our total lack of boundaries makes us noble, but in reality, it just makes us empty. And when you are operating from a place of chronic emptiness, your psychological immune system completely collapses. This is exactly why we start taking everything so personally. When your entire sense of self-worth is outsourced to the people around you, you have to constantly monitor their reactions just to feel safe in your own body. A sigh from a coworker across the room suddenly means they think you are incompetent. A partner who comes home quiet and just wants to read a book means they are losing interest in you entirely. I remember receiving a text message not long after that moving incident. I had asked a different friend a long, thoughtful question about a career choice that was deeply important to me, and I got a 3-word, flat reply. My mind immediately spiraled. I spent hours agonizing over our last few interactions, wondering how I had failed them. I was convinced they were finally realizing I was annoying and were slowly pushing me away. 2 days later, I found out their father had just been admitted to the hospital. Their short, blunt reply had absolutely nothing to do with me. They were just surviving a family crisis. But my anxiety was so self-centered, so tied up in my own insecurity, that I had automatically assumed I was the main character in their bad mood. In psychology, this dynamic relates to something called your locus of control. When we live solely to please others, we surrender the steering wheel of our emotional lives. We start believing that the emotional weather of the room dictates the climate of our own mind. If they are happy, we are finally allowed to exhale and be happy. If they are distant or short with us, we assume we are fundamentally broken and need to fix it immediately. We lose the ability to pause and ask a very simple, very grounding psychological question. Is this about me, or is this about them? Because the painfully true reality is this. Most of the time, the way people treat you is a direct reflection of their own internal relationship with themselves. It is their stress, their rushing, their lack of sleep, their unhealed wounds spilling over. It is not an accurate, objective review of your performance as a human being. If you recognize yourself in this cycle, if you are the friend who is always giving, the partner who is always bending, the employee who never clocks out, I want you to hear this clearly. You are not weak for doing this. You are not foolish. You are using a brilliant survival strategy. Somewhere along the line, probably very early in your life, you learned that being low maintenance was the only reliable way to be loved. You learned to read the room because the emotional temperature of that room was unpredictable, and your safety depended on anticipating what everyone else needed before they even had to ask. You became the emotional shock absorber for your family. You became a chameleon because standing out or having needs was dangerous. That hypervigilance kept you safe once upon a time, but it is slowly destroying your spirit now. The only way out of this exhausting trap is to do the one thing that feels completely unnatural to a people pleaser. You have to risk disappointing someone. You have to start introducing the word no into your daily vocabulary. I remember the first time I actually tried it. A coworker asked me to take on a massive piece of a project over the weekend. I felt that familiar, sickening drop in my stomach, the immediate urge to swallow my own exhaustion and just nod. My throat felt dry. My heart was racing. But instead of automatically agreeing, I took a breath. I gave a short, clear boundary, and I offered an alternative. I calmly said, I would love to help you out, but I am completely at capacity right now. I can look at a small section of it on Monday morning, but I can't take the whole thing this weekend. I braced myself for their anger. I waited for them to call me selfish or lazy or a bad team player. But all they said was, oh, okay, no problem. I'll ask someone else. And that was it. The world didn't end. The silence that followed wasn't a punishment. It was just silence. They weren't deeply offended. They just moved on to the next option. We build up the catastrophic scenarios in our heads, believing that one single boundary will destroy a relationship. But healthy people do not hate you for having limits. You do not have to write a 3-paragraph apology text when you decline an invitation. You do not have to aggressively defend your need for rest. A boundary does not need to be an argument or a negotiation. It can just be a calm, quiet reporting of the facts. It is a painful, heavy thing to realize that people-pleasing is actually a form of hiding. When you agree to everything, when you never voice a dissenting opinion, you are never actually letting anyone know who you are. You are just giving them an avatar, a perfectly molded reflection of whatever you think they want you to be. And the deepest tragedy of the nice guy trap is that you can spend your entire life being surrounded by people, being constantly praised for how helpful you are, yet feel entirely, devastatingly lonely. Because how can you feel deeply loved if the person they are loving is just an act you are putting on? True connection requires you to actually be there. It requires your friction, your preferences, and your limits. When you start pausing before you answer, when you stop to ask yourself, do I actually want to do this? Or am I just afraid of their reaction? You begin to reclaim your internal space. When someone gives you a blunt answer, and you gently remind yourself, this is probably about their day, not my worth, you build a wall of quiet protection around your peace. At first, letting go of the need to please everyone will feel terrifying. You will feel a profound sense of guilt. Let the guilt be there. Guilt is just the ghost of an old rule you are finally breaking. It means you are growing. You do not have to earn your right to exist by being endlessly useful to everybody else. You are allowed to be tired. You are allowed to be inconvenient. You are allowed to let someone else be disappointed. Your worth is not measured by how much of your own life you are willing to erase just to make the room more comfortable for someone else. When you stop trying to be an accommodating ghost to everyone, you finally have the energy to be something real to yourself. And that quiet, grounded reality is worth infinitely more than 1,000 empty approvals.